I'm sure that most of you are aware that as a society we generate a lot of trash, but you might not be aware of just how much is generated in terms of unwanted clothing or textiles. According to the Council for Textile Recycling, the U.S. generates a staggering 25 billion pounds of unwanted textiles, 85% of which goes to landfills. However, 90% of this can be reused or recycled. So today I want to convince you that you should recycle clothing you'd otherwise throw in the trash. I'm your classmate, Asta Bills, and just like the rest of you, I've been tasked with an assignment where I need to try to move people to some kind of beneficial course of action. Normally I wouldn't, because I am kind of cynical and a little bit lazy. However, after spending a harrowing weekend Marie Kondoing my childhood home and realizing just how wasteful my approach was, I was inspired to do some research regarding textile recycling. So without further ado, I'm going to share this tale of emptying out my childhood home. So my dad wants to retire soon, and he is downsizing his property holdings. This means that we have mountains of stuff that has accumulated over the years, needs to be sorted through to see what has resale value or sentimental value. It's an enormous undertaking. And part of what I encountered was like almost my entire childhood's worth of unwanted clothing. Probably some of it was wearable or salvageable, but the fact of the matter is that it just, to me, looked like a pile, like a huge hoard of ratty t-shirts and ratty holey jeans. So in my opinion, it was garbage. So because I didn't want to deal with this odious task of sorting anything, I just decided to throw it all away. And I filled about 3 55-gallon trash cans of unwanted clothing rather than cherry picking. And it turns out that's really not a common mentality. According to a 2016 study conducted by Savers, which is a thrift retailer, 1 in 3 people who don't donate, they choose to toss their old items because it's convenient. And what's really sad is when you consider just how labor intensive and resource intensive the virgin materials were to create those items in the first place. For example, those, what ultimately became a ratty t-shirt and ratty jeans combo, kind of a tried and true staple. To create that from virgin materials entails consuming about 5,000 gallons of water. And worse yet, as stated before, 90% of textiles can be reused or recycled. But like a caricature of an ugly American, I chose to send it all to the landfill instead of finding an alternative. So now that I've shared my shameful, wasteful story, I'll lay out a couple arguments in support of recycling unwanted clothing. Likely it comes as no surprise, but you should do it because it's good for the environment. As stated before, the United States generates 25 billion pounds of textile waste, but that number is on the rise. According to the Council for Textile Recycling, for 2019 it expects to grow to 35 billion pounds of unwanted textile waste. But by ensuring that your garments are properly handled and recycled where you can stop contributing to this growing problem of items going to landfills unnecessarily. Additionally, clothing recycling makes a positive impact in terms of carbon emissions. So when 2 million tons of textiles are recycled and removed from the waste stream, it's similar to removing 1 million cars from the streets of the United States as far as reducing carbon emissions. Finally, clothing recycling helps create the opportunity for recycled textiles to replace resource-intensive and less environmentally friendly virgin materials from the supply chain. For example, cotton accounts for 33% of all textile fibers, and it's extremely resource-intensive to farm. It takes nearly 2,700 liters of water to create a single cotton t-shirt. And for comparison, 2,700 liters is what a normal, like an average person will drink in about 2.5 years. Virgin cotton is also very chemically dependent, and it consumes a lot of agricultural chemicals. Like 25% of all insecticides used in agriculture annually go to cotton farming. Virgin synthetics are no less worse in terms of being kind of resource intensive and wasteful that way. Polyester, for example, it's estimated that it costs us 70 million barrels of oil to create virgin polyester on an annual basis. And a polyester shirt has about twice the carbon footprint of one that's made of cotton. New polyester textiles amount to about 1.5 trillion pounds of greenhouse gases in 2015, which is the carbon equivalent of the emissions created by 185 coal-powered plants. Not only does clothing recycling kind of benefit our environment, but it can benefit your wallet too. So one way for you to recycle clothing would be to just donate it to an organization such as Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul that sort of accept everything. And you can itemize those donations when you're doing your taxes and decrease your tax liability, which is a little extra in your pocket. Additionally, there are retailers such as Levi's, the North Face, American Eagle Outfitters that have programs where they accept donations of all kinds for clothing, and they incentivize you with coupons and rewards programs. So if clothing recycling is an environmentally conscious and wallet conscious thing to do, why don't more people do that? One reason that I could think of is just sort of where I was at, which is laziness. They don't want to sort their stuff. But it turns out you don't have to sort your stuff, because if you choose to go the route of making those donations to charitable groups like Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul, or through a retailer like the North Face or H&M, they're going to sort all that stuff for you. You don't have to deal with it. Additionally, if you do a minimal amount of legwork, you can look on the web and find out where there's either a pickup spot or just a clothing specific recycling bin in your area. And the organizations that handle those are textile recyclers, so they're well equipped to sort through that stuff, sell what they can, reuse what they can, and recycle what they absolutely have to. So laziness really isn't a valid argument against clothing recycling. But perhaps the biggest obstacle to getting people to recycle unwanted clothing is apathy and cynicism, and believing that these small actions don't add up to something larger in the big picture. But they do. Remember that textile recycling can remove carbon emissions to the tune of 2 million tons, being equal to 1 million cars coming off the road. Then there's the fact that only 85% of stuff, or that 85% of stuff doesn't get recycled. So we're only dealing with 15% of post-consumer textiles being recycled, and that actually feeds a pretty thriving sort of niche industry of garment recyclers. This supports 17,000 jobs across 500 companies, which are owned and operated by small or family businesses. So if just that 15% can support this industry and do economic good, it begs the question of what a bigger turnout for post-consumer textile recycling could do. Finally, though this is not directly related to textile recycling, I wanted to name a specific example of how small contributions created a big impact for the greater good. So in 2015, a young lawyer named Afraz Shah moved to an apartment in Mumbai, which was near Versova Beach, which was heavily polluted. There was a lot of garbage, and in some places there was plastic material as deep as 5 feet. And he recruited his 84-year-old neighbor and started to pick up trash on the beach. And eventually, through some grassroots knocking on doors and of other neighbors and recruiting other residents of that area, they got over 1,000 volunteers. And in just 21 months, they removed over 11 million pounds of trash and restored this beach that was once so heavily polluted into a clean and beautiful shoreline that can be enjoyed once again. So as you can see, laziness, apathy, and cynicism are not valid reasons to not recycle your unwanted clothing. Choosing to recycle unwanted clothing is a worthwhile course of action. It's beneficial to the environment as well as your wallet. It doesn't require the effort of sorting salvageables and recyclables if you don't want to do that. And it's a small action that anyone can take to contribute to the greater good. So going forward, I hope all of you listening will make sure that your unwanted clothing goes directly to either a textile recycler, to a charitable organization that recycles what can't be sold, or to a retailer that accepts donations to facilitate recycling instead of just into the trash. Thank you.